Good morning. I'm Ed Scott, and on behalf of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to our service this morning, whether you're joining us here or online virtually. Know that this is a welcoming community, open to all, regardless of your origin or how you identify. And this morning, in the spirit of welcoming, I want to remind you that either during the service or after the service, be sure to greet those around you with a friendly greeting, a nod, a fist bump, whatever moves you, but please reach out to those around you and introduce yourself. And now, it's time to prepare our whole selves for our time together this morning.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Larry Peers, minister here at the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. I want to welcome David Hearn, who's our guest musician today. Thank you, David. And Cindy Cohen, who's our song leader, and Ed Scott, who you've met as our worship associate. And I want to appreciate your presence because, David, it's just like the notes in music, like when they're all together, they make beautiful music. So it's great to see the song that you are today. I want to acknowledge our board members who spent all day yesterday in a retreat. Some of them might be able to stand. So if they could, please stand so that you can see your board members and their dedication to the work of this congregation. So our call to worship comes from these words attributed to Chief Seattle. When you know who you are, when your mission is clear, and you burn with the inner fire of unbreakable will, no cold can touch your heart, no deluge can dampen your purpose. You know that you are alive. In that sense of aliveness, let us now join together in worship as we sing our, do we sing our first song now? Chalice lighting, as we do our chalice lighting. How easy they forget, huh?
As we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, those of you at home, if you have a chalice, I ask you to join in the chalice lighting. Our chalice lighting words this morning are adapted from those of Adam Slate. We gather this morning as one community, united by common ideals, love, justice, diversity, mutual care, and equity. See the faces around you? Each one represents an individual with their own story, needs, strengths, and yes, faults, their own life purpose. And we light this chalice, honoring the uniqueness of each and our common humanity. Now, please stand as you're able for the singing of hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life, and please remain standing after for our unison affirmation.
For each you think we learn, for fearful
Together, let us now affirm our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Let us join now in a time of prayerful meditation, feeling your feet caressing the earth, feeling the earth caressing your feet, feeling that deep connection to all that is our life, feeling your body supported by the chair that you're sitting in, and knowing you are upheld in so many ways, and feeling the precious gift of breath, which you receive each moment as a gift of life itself. This meditation comes from the work of Howard Thurman. How good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see one's self pass by. The streets of our minds seethe with endless traffic. Our spirits resound with clashings, with noisy silences, while something deep within hungers and thirsts for the still moment and the resting lull. With full intensity we seek, ere the quiet passes, a fresh sense of order in our living, a direction, a strong, pure purpose that will structure our confusion and bring meaning to our chaos. We look at ourselves in this waiting moment. What are we doing with our lives? What are the motives that order our days? What is the end in all of our doings? Where are we trying to go? Where do we put the emphasis? And where are our values focused? For what end do we make sacrifices? And where is my treasure? And what do I love most in life? What do I hate most in life? And what am I true? Over and over the questions beat in the waiting moment. As we listen, floating up through all the jangling echoes of our turbulence, there is a sound of another kind, a deeper note which only the stillness of the heart makes clear. It moves directly to the core of our being. Our questions are answered, our spirits refreshed, and we move back into the traffic of our daily round with the peace of the eternal in our step. How good it is to center down. Let us join together for a time of centering down as we enter now into this time of shared silence. Amen. We take this time each Sunday to listen to what is weighing on our hearts in our own lives, in the lives that we care about, and for our common world. So take a moment now and listen to those concerns that you carry. And if you so choose, in a moment, we'll open up and give you an opportunity to speak those cares, those concerns into this room. But first, listen to your own heart and see what it is that meets you there. If you are joining us online, please feel free to write your concern or your care, what you care about today, in the chat. And for those of you who are here, if you so choose, you may speak aloud whatever it is that you are holding in your own heart as a care or concern right now. Anyone?
And the caring of this congregation in such uncertain times.
And let's take a moment, particularly thinking about those in our community who are ill, who need care, who need our compassion, so that we hold them as close to our heart as if their heart was ours. Let's speak some of those names in the room. What joys are whispering to you today that maybe you need to amplify them a little bit in order for them to be heard amidst everything else? Is there a joy that is spilling out in you that you want to hold up in this company, in this community gathered here today? What joys might you have?
Spraying around the corner. Yes, just being here.
So our joys and our sorrows are intertwined, and we hold them together. May all whose names were spoken and those unspoken find peace and healing this day.
I'm going to sing the first verse in Japanese, and after that there will be 2 English verses, I believe, on the screen. You can follow along.
This morning's reading is taken from the writings of Anne Lamott, who some of you may be familiar with. My 7-year-old grandson sleeps just down the hall from me, and he wakes up a lot of mornings and he says, "You know, this could be the best day ever." And at other times, in the middle of the night, he calls out in a tremulous voice, "Nana, will you ever get sick and die?" I think this pretty much says it for me and most of the people I know, that we're a mixed grill of anticipation and dread. So I sat down a few days before my 61st birthday, and I decided to compile a list of everything I know for sure. There's so little truth in the popular culture, and it's good to be sure of a few things. For instance, I'm no longer 47, although this is the age I feel, and the age I think of myself as being. My friend Paul used to say in his late 70s that he felt like a young man that really had something wrong with him. Our true person is outside of time and space. But looking at the paperwork, I can in fact see that I was born in 1954. My inside self is outside of time and space. It doesn't have an age. I'm every age I've ever been, and so are you. Although I can't help mentioning as an aside that it might have been helpful if I hadn't followed the skincare rules of the 60s, which involved getting as much sun as possible and lathering myself up with baby oil and basking in the glow of a tinfoil shield. It was so liberating, though, to face the truth that I was no longer in the last throes of middle age, that I decided to write down every single thing I know. People feel really doomed and overwhelmed these days, and they keep asking me, what is true? So I hope that my list of things I'm almost positive about might offer some basic operating instructions to anyone who's feeling really overwhelmed or beleaguered. Number one, the first and truest thing is that all truth is a paradox. Life is both a precious, unfathomably beautiful gift. It's impossible here on the incarnational side of things. It's been a very bad match for those of us who were born extremely sensitive. It's so hard and weird that we sometimes wonder if we're being punked. It's filled simultaneously with heartbreaking sweetness and beauty, desperate poverty, floods, babies, acne, Mozart, all mixed up together. I don't think it's an ideal system. Number two, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. Moving ahead to number 5. Chocolate, number 75%, is not actually food. Its best use is as a bait in snake traps or to balance legs of wobbly chairs. It was never meant to be considered edible. Number 6, writing. Every writer you know writes really terrible first drafts, but they keep their butt in the chair. That is the secret of life. That's probably the main difference between you and them. They just do it. They do it by prearrangement with themselves. They do it as a debt of honor. They tell stories that come through them one day at a time, little by little. If you don't know where to start, remember that every single thing that happened to you is yours, and you get to tell it. If people wanted you to write more warmly about them, they should have behaved better. You're going to feel like hell if you wake up someday and you never wrote that stuff that is tugging on the sleeves of your heart. Your stories, your memories, your visions, your songs, in your own voice. That's really all you have to offer us. And that's also why you were born. Now, skipping ahead to number 10. Grace is virtual WD-40, or water wings. The movement of grace is what changes us, heals the world. To summon grace, say help, and then buckle up. Grace finds you exactly where you are, but it doesn't leave you where it found you, and Grace won't look like Casper the friendly ghost. But the phone will ring or the mail will come, and then against all odds, you'll get your sense of humor about yourself back. Laughter really is carbonated holiness. It helps us breathe again and again and gives us back to ourselves and gives us faith in life and each other. And remember, grace always bats last. Emerson said that the happiest person on earth is the one who learns from nature the lessons of worship. So go outside a lot and look up. My pastor said you can trap bees on the bottom of mason jars without lids because they don't look up. So they just walk around bitterly bumping into the glass a while. Go outside. Look up. Secret of life.
Thank you, Ed. Let's all just take a moment and look up. So we just heard some of the things that are on Anne Lamott's list of things she knew for sure were true. They include things that are intentionally ridiculous, like that thing about chocolate. And some of you in this room, I know, consider chocolate a sacrament. So anything with 75% cacao doesn't have the same kind of holiness. Oh yeah, and there's a lot of truth in what you shared. And there are some things on that list that are more than true. These are the truths that ring within us, the truths that are waiting for us to answer, the truths that may be wanting to be heard. And I include in this category that truth that is mentioned in Lamott's list, worth hearing again. You're going to feel like hell if you wake up someday and you never wrote the stuff that is tugging on the sleeves of your heart. Your stories, your memories, visions and songs, your truth, your version of things in your own voice. That's really all you have to offer us. Whether you write it, whether you sing it, whether you dance it, whether you even just whisper it, we know it when we have moved beyond just pushing our own voice aside or stuffing it down. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke declared this desire for this moment in verses, in poetry, and it's one of my favorite poems. You'll indulge me, won't you, if I read it? Just say yes. Okay, you insist. I believe in all that has never yet been spoken. I want to be to free what waits within me, so that what no one has dared to wish for may for once spring clear without my contriving. If this is arrogant, God, forgive me, but this is what I need to say. May what I do flow from me like a river, no forcing, no holding back, the way it is with children. And then in these swelling and ebbing currents, these deepening tides moving out and returning, I will sing you as no one ever has, streaming through widening channels into the open sea. And I believe there is this innate desire. I hear it in this poem. There is this innate desire, this need in us to not just compile our truths in a list, as Lamont did, but for us to live our truths as well. I would call living our truths living on purpose. There can be a purpose that pulsates within us. There can be a purpose that flows in us like the very blood within our veins. The challenge is to find just enough stillness within ourselves and enough courage, enough heartfulness to hear it over and against whatever forces exist within or around us, so that at some moment, even now, we can declare, as May Sarton did, some more verses from poetry. Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I have been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces, run madly as if time were there, terribly old, crying a warning, hurry, you'll be dead before. What? Before you reach the morning, or the end of the poem is clear, or love safe in the walled city, now to stand still, to be here, to feel my own weight and destiny. Let's just take a moment now and feel the weight of our own body. Feel the weight of who we are in this moment, the full weight of you, so that you may also feel that tug towards your own destiny as well. In his article, Now I Become Myself, Parker Palmer, the Quaker writer, educator, and social activist, recognizes some deeper truth in the stories of his life, and he recognized some of this retrospectively. He wrote, "A few years ago, I found some clues to myself in a time machine of sorts. A friend sent me a tattered copy of my high school newspaper from May 1957, in which I had been interviewed about what I intended to do with my life." Now take a moment and think for yourself. What might you have said when you were in high school about what you would have done or planning to do with your own life? You got it? Can you think back that far? Tomas, can you think back that far? Okay. And he continues, "With the certainty to be expected of a high school senior, I told the interview that I would become a naval aviator and then take up a career in advertising. I was indeed wearing other people's faces, and I can tell you exactly whose they were. My father worked with a man who had once been a Navy pilot. He was Irish, charismatic, romantic, full of the wild blue yonder and a fair share of the blarney. And I wanted to be like him. The father of one of my boyhood friends was in advertising, and though I did not yearn to take on his persona, which was too buttoned down for my taste, I did yearn for the fast car and the other large toys that seemed to be the accessories of his selfhood. Hidden in my desire to become an ad man was a lifelong fascination with language and its power to persuade. The same fascination that has kept me writing incessantly for decades. Hidden in my desire to become a naval aviator was something more complex, a personal engagement with the problem of violence that expressed itself at first in military fantasies and then, over a period of many years, resolved itself in the pacifism I aspire to today. So when I flip the coin of identity, he concludes, I held it so tightly in high school, and I find the paradoxical opposite that emerged as the years went by. How about you? How do you compare to yourself, your high school image of yourself, of what you would become and where you are now? What's your sense of that for you? Okay. Parker Palmer's life and my own life actually intersected when he had left his academic career in Georgetown University and his community organizing work in Washington, D.C., in order to come and to go to Pendle Hill, Quaker Center for Study and Contemplation in Wallingford, Pennsylvania, which I know some of you know. He went there originally for a year's sabbatical, some time off, and he ended up staying there for 11 years, eventually becoming the dean. Quite a sabbatical. It was then that our lives actually intersected. I was a college student. I took a year off between my junior and senior year simply because I had been propelled so much from my mother's death when I was 16 into a survival mode, self-sufficiency, and I'd gotten so self-absorbed with accomplishment as a way of getting through that I absolutely needed to pause and to ask, where am I headed? What am I called to do? What's my purpose? Now, maybe I had a premature midlife crisis. I don't know, but that's what was happening with me at that particular age and stage of my life. Maybe it was like May Sarton, I just needed now to stand still, to be here, to feel my own weight and destiny. And maybe some of you have had times like that in your own life as well. A series of fortuitous coincidences landed me at Pendle Hill, a temporary community of about 30 people or so, from college age to even a woman in her 80s who had just retired from being a Latin teacher her whole life. Parker and I were at different ages and stages of life. He was a teacher, I was a student, yet we were living, I think, in that same territory of the soul. During that time, each of us were listening to what had called us to Pendle Hill and what was calling in our own life. At Pendle Hill, I encountered people who were examples of living on purpose or who were sincerely wanting to get back on track. As life would have it, Parker and I have intersected at professional conferences again and again over the decades, and I cherish that continuous thread that first connected us at Pendle Hill. Over the years, I've read his books and imbibed some of his reflective teaching style, which I first experienced at Pendle Hill, and which he was just beginning to articulate as a meeting for learning, where questions, inner reflections, dialogue, and even silences awaken us to the inner teacher. In his book, Let Your Life Speak, Listening for the Voice of Vocation, he shares these insights around living a life on purpose. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you've decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody what values you represent. He writes, vocation does not come from willfulness. It comes from listening. He says, I must listen to my life and try to understand what it's truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about, or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. So through a series of events in my own life, some joyful, some painful, I have felt that tug to continue to live a life on purpose. I've shared with you again and again the truth that would have been on my mother's list of truths she knew were certainly true. Experience her life and her death within the span of my first 16 years meant that this truth got imparted to me as well, even in her dying. Life is a gift, not a given. Life is a gift, not a given. Try that truth on for size for the moment. Say that after me and just see where it lands in you. Life is a truth and not a given. Say it. I'm sorry, it's a gift and not a given. Okay. It's not always come easy or been easy. I'm not always on track. But I stumble along in any case. I have the great joy of trying out for and living out my own vocation every day. And I realize that vocation is never really just about ourselves. It's never just about us personally. Frederick Buechner asserts in his definition of vocation that vocation is the place where our deep joy meets the world's deep need. Indeed, the journey of living life on purpose, the journey of vocation, always includes a deeper listening to ourselves and listening to the world, to what's calling to us from the world that we live in. Finding those intersecting points between these two brings something forth and something forward in our life in their alchemy. This afternoon, Karin Thomas and I will be leading a short workshop on Ikigai. So many people have asked us how to pronounce it. So let's do Ikigai. Oh, your Japanese is just great. It's a Japanese word with no exact translation. It's a word made by joining the characters Iki, meaning life or being alive, with the character Gai, meaning what is worthwhile and has value. So literal translation might be that which makes life worth living, what gets you up in the morning. Karin was once stationed in Okinawa, and her interest in Ikigai was inspired, at least in part, by what she experienced there and by her vocation as a medical doctor. And I feel that the process of discerning one's Ikigai is similar to that alchemy that I described in Buechner's definition of vocation. In Ikigai, one is trying to discern those intersecting points, which in the case of Ikigai include your responses to these questions. What do you love? What does the world need? What rewards you? And what are you good at? Listening to each of those parts of ourselves and the places where our responses intersect gives us that sense of meaning, sense of purpose that can compel us and hone us as we live our days. So, Sure, most of you have heard I will continue to have for the next 18 months or so the privilege of living out and continuing to discover my vocation and my Ikigai with you. I know that I will be rewarded and challenged to places of depth and meaning and to discovering what is needed until my final day as your minister. I know that I'm in good company of many who have also listened to their deep joy and what the world needs, to those who live out or aim to live out their Ikigai. You will continue to inspire me. And when I really listen, I sense that this congregation is ready to enter into the process of discerning its next chapter, not under duress, but under a much slower process of discernment. I believe that you are ready to undertake the process that takes over a year or so, as Ed will explain, for finding your next settled minister. But please remember this. Say yes before you even hear me say them. Yes, we'll remember. You know I love you. You know I love my work with you. You know that I am energized by what we do together on purpose. So as we travel these next 18 months or so with one another, I want us to be purposeful, to fill in the gaps that still are needed in this congregation, and to prepare our hearts and our spirits for what's next in the life of this congregation, and for my part, what's next in my own life. In her dramatic poem, Mary Oliver offers this bit of wisdom. When it's over, I want to say, all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. So, let's take this journey of living on purpose together. Amen.
During my time as a member here at First U, I've intentionally become involved in various ways. And in doing so, I've learned a number of things about myself, about this community. I've received a lot from the church and from the friendships which have developed here. Friendships that developed as we worked together, as we explored together, and as we worshiped together. The fellowship here has provided support, encouragement, and growth. for which I am very grateful. I have no doubt that my life is richer because of first you. As I look at those of you gathered here in the sanctuary, I see the stewards of this community. I see stewards of this faith, those who provide care and nurturing and sustenance to this community. Together, we are the ones that make it what it is, and together, we'll make it what it can be. And I ask you, the stewards of this community, to be as thoughtful and generous as you can in your continued giving and support of this community this morning. During the offertory music, you will see displayed on the screen the various ways which you can give this morning, which are familiar to many of you, including the baskets which are at the rear of the sanctuary. And now, would you please join me in dedicating this morning's offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry in love and action. We dedicate our lives, and these are offerings. As we extinguish our chalice this morning, I ask you to take heart on your journey of discovery for your Ikigai. Whether you already know it or you're still in exploration, enjoy the ride and remember, each day you are not alone. And while we are all writing our story, let the chalice be your beacon on the way. As you see from the order of worship, there's a message from the board. One of the purposes of the message is to avoid having an elephant in the room. Many of you have received a letter Many of you have read an email blast or the e-news and know of the decision that Reverend Larry has made regarding his ministry here. We've had many long, searching conversations together with Reverend Larry. As you all feel, the board and all of us are very grateful for his leadership, and we are committed to working together during the remaining 18 months of his formal ministry here. Working over these next several months to continue our momentum and to make us as strong as we possibly can be. The board has already been in touch with the UUA Office of Transitions, and as some of you know, there's a defined process, and there's a fair amount of work ahead of us. As a member of the previous search committee a few years ago, I can tell you that it's thorough and I trust the process. But one of the things that I think is very important, this process is not just a journey for the board. It's our journey as a congregation. It's a journey which we will take together. It involves all of us. As we learn about ourselves and as we prepare, as Reverend Larry said, for the next chapter in the life of the congregation. One of the first steps will be, as some of you know, the formation of a search committee. And in the next couple of months, the board will identify the framework and the methodology for establishing that search committee. And we'll be reaching out to the congregation, and this is one of the ways in which you can help and participate in the process. We'll be reaching out to you for help and for input on forming that search committee. We're in this together, and as we all know, together we're one, and together we're stronger. And as always, I and the rest of the board want to thank you for being a part of this community and for your continued partnership as we move together. Thank you. Thank you.
So, if you're looking for a bright spot in all of this, you don't have to look very far. Kate is standing back there with a bright yellow shawl. She's available to talk to any of you who are visiting us, newcomers, about First Unitarian Church and help you connect to what it is that we do and who we are. There are a few invitations to community today. One is happening right at noon. As I mentioned, Karin Thomas and I are going to be leading a workshop on living on purpose, Ikigai. So that'll be from noon to 1. Thank you for all of you who are nourishing us by bringing snacks that are available for our fellowship time following the service. And then at 5 o'clock today, those of you who've signed up for the light dinner can join us. And then at 5:30 is the program that Liz Darling is doing on planning your estate. So it could be like a full day of activity for you. And so the benediction is from Howard Thurman, who wrote, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And then go and do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." Let's join together in singing our closing hymn, 1053, How Could Anyone?
Thank you.